Today, we're going back to the basics. We're smoking some St. Louis style pork ribs on none other than the Weber Kettle. Now I'll go over everything from seasoning the ribs to prepping the grill to show you just how simple smoking ribs really is. So here I have a 3-pack of some St. Louis style pork spare ribs. Now, these packs typically have a ton of juice in them, so I'm gonna cut it from the top and pull them out one by one. I am only cooking 2 of these today. Now, first things first, again, like I said, there's a lot of moisture that comes out of these packs, so just pat them dry with a paper towel, top and bottom. And then honestly, when it comes to these ribs, I'm just cooking these at home for me and the family to eat. So I don't really go too crazy with any trimming and making it super pretty. My goal is to just make these as tasty as possible. Now, you don't really want to leave this membrane alone. We either want to pull it off or score into it with our boning knife. This way we can get all that smoke and those flavors from the seasonings back on that side of the bone as well. Again, what this does is it opens this up, allows us to get our seasonings into there. If you prefer to just take the membrane off, no worries, that works too. Grab yourself a paper towel, pick a corner of the membrane and just rip it off. Now that that's all scored up, you want to grab some kind of seasoning. Here I have some Heath Ryle's Competition Barbecue Rub. This stuff tastes really good. Use what you like. I've used everything. I like Killer Hog's Rib Rub. I like this. Really, it's up to your preference, whatever flavor you're looking for. But if you've never tried this, I'd give it a shot. It's really good. Some beautiful color in it too. Typically when I'm seasoning meats, I'll keep one glove hand to pat, one hand to hold the bottle. Nice heavy coating on here. If you want, you can use a binder. Grab yourself some mustard, some olive oil. But in all honesty, it's really not super necessary. I honestly don't notice much of a difference anyways, because once we season this, we're gonna let all the seasoning sweat into the meat. And these typically have a lot of moisture in them out of the pack, just like I said, so it's enough to start to see your seasoning bind well to the meat. Our ribs are all seasoned up. Let's head on over to the Weber and I'll show you which method I'm using to smoke these. All right, so here's our grill. We of course have none other than the snake method set up. One of my favorite methods for low and slow cooking. As you can see here, I have these stacked up 2 by 2. The reason being, it's a little bit colder out. I want to run this a little bit hotter, do a bit of a shorter cook. We're shooting for between 275 to 300 degree grill temperature. It should land us at around a 3 to 4 hour cook time for our ribs. Now I'm using some Kingsford charcoal here. Again, use whatever charcoal you like. Use what you prefer. Kingsford works great. I like applewood with pork especially because it's a little bit more of a subtle smoke flavor. Sometimes when you use hickory, it just kind of overpowers the flavor of the pork. Now, if you've never seen my detailed video explaining exactly how to set up the snake method, how to manage the temperature, go ahead and check that out after this video. But if you're to do this indirect, with a slow and sear, or even on your pellet grill, the process is really still the same as far as prep time and temperature goes. What I have here is a tumbleweed. Throw it at the beginning of our snake and pile up a couple coals right on top there. We want to start this with a couple extra coals. This will help ramp up the grill temperature. And there's just one more step before we put our cooking grate on. And this next step is just adding in this water pan. I like to add this in because it'll help keep more moisture inside of the grill for our ribs, since we are doing these a little bit hotter. So let's throw our grate on. Got my bottom vent wide open. You want to keep them as far away from the direct heat as possible. Now I know I'm doing 2 bigger racks here, so one of these is going to be closer to the heat source. So what we'll have to do periodically throughout the cook is we'll just have to shuffle them around, shuffle them back and forth, maybe turn them, make sure that they're cooking consistently. Now I have seen this cool little gadget on Amazon, which is actually a rib rack that these things can sit up in a little bit more vertically. This way you can fit more in a grill with a smaller cooking space, such as this Weber. And if you want to lay one rack a little bit over top of the other, that will not harm it at all. And then the most important part, your thermometer with your ambient grill probe. This will give us the most accurate reading of what the grill temperature is, where the meat is actually sitting. Replace your lid with the vent over top of the meat. That allows the smoke and the flavor to drag up and over the meat. I'm starting with my vents wide open. If I'm running a little bit hot, I'll back off on the vents and adjust them accordingly. About 45 minutes in, as you can see, the snake started to burn through. So I'm going to take this grate and I'm going to turn it to keep it far away from that direct heat source. So let me just go ahead here. What I have here is a little bit of cherry Dr. Pepper. Put it in, shook it up, got all those bubbles out of there so that the pressure doesn't build up in the bottle. Just give this a little spritz. Check back in another 45 minutes or so. 2 hours in, this is looking beautiful, starting to get a bark. So what we'll actually do is I'm going to take this bottom rack and flip-flop it with this top rack here. I'll take this, lay this right down here. Also, our heat source is getting closer to our ribs. Let's just pick this up and shuffle it. Let's give this a spritz. Now I'd say about every 45 minutes or so, repeat that same process. Turn your grate, spritz your ribs, and make sure that they're cooking evenly. If you're doing one rack, it's fine, leave it alone. If you're doing two, in the Weber, like I said, there's not as much cooking space, so you have to kind of adjust, shuffle them around, make sure they're cooking evenly. After about 3 hours here, our bark is set nice on both racks. None of the seasonings are coming off on my finger, and we're starting to get some bones peeking out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these off, and we're going to go ahead to the prep cart, and we're going to wrap these. When it comes to wrapping ribs, typically there will be two options: butcher's paper or tin foil. Now I've used both plenty of times, but I really prefer butcher's paper just because it's a little bit more breathable than the foil. Now you can get creative during this process. You can add butter, brown sugar, honey, barbecue sauce, seasoning. Do what you please, make it interesting. Try out different things. We're gonna lay down some butter and some barbecue sauce. Here I have some Kinder's Gold, and then finish it off with some of the seasoning that you actually season the ribs with. Place these meat side down. But I'm going to take this, fold this over, covers about half of the rack. Fold that in, and fold in your other side. Now what I'll do is I'll make sure this is tight and just give it a flip. And then you can actually take your excess here and just fold it under to kind of keep everything in place. It's that simple. Coming back to our grill, as you can see, our snake has burnt most of the way through. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add on just a couple more coals at the tail end of this so that we have enough fuel to finish our cook. Take your racks, meat side down. Now you can stack them. And we'll place it across from the direct heat source. Add our ambient temperature probe back in, and we'll probably leave this alone for about another hour or so. All right, y'all, it's been about another hour and 15 minutes or so, and we'll throw these over on our prep cart so that we can unwrap them, sauce them, and toss them back on the grill for the final 15 to 30 minutes. This is one of the best parts about this here. Wrapping this the way that I did, with just a little of that extra slack, allows us to open this super easily. Woo! Look at that. That is gorgeous. We have a nice glaze on here from the butter, as well as that sauce. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Is I like to take just a little bit more of my sauce. I'll throw it on top here. And we'll just spread this out. After doing this, just toss this back on the grill. Here we are, you can see that beautiful glaze on here from that butter and that barbecue sauce, as well as the extra barbecue sauce we threw on there. Again, we're gonna let this sit in here, let this heat tack that sauce up, and we'll pull this out in about 15 minutes or so, let it rest, and we'll cut it up. All right, now for the fun part. We had a total cook time of a little over 4.5 hours or so, a little longer than I anticipated, but I had some temperature issues in the beginning. So now when cutting these, what you want to do is you want to flip them over. This will help you see where the bones are, and you can easily cut in between the bone. So grab your knife, find two bones, and you want to cut right in between, just like that. And that is a beautiful looking rib. We have a nice saucy glaze on the top, nice smoke ring in here, nice and juicy. This is going to have a bit of a bite, which I like. If you like them fall off the bone, let them run a little bit longer. But this is exactly what I was looking for right here. Here we have two beautiful racks of St. Louis style ribs. So let me take one of these here. We're going to give this a good bite, let you know what I think. This is super tender, super juicy. The flavor is really there. Like I said, the charcoal, the applewood, the Heath Ryle seasoning, this Kinder's Gold barbecue sauce, everything together, and I think this makes a beautiful rib.